know that I am the one to introduce my good friend, an eloquent speaker, a very knowledgeable woman, and my dearest soror. Dr. Peyton McCoy is a consultant, a speaker, and an author, a workshop facilitator. And Peyton is the kind of person that she can get the word across in multiple ways. She can enrich your life with her knowledge. She can share herself with you to empower you. And most of all, she's concerned about our community. She's concerned about what the yesterdays were, what the tomorrows will be, and how we fit into that puzzle. So I want you to sit back. I don't want you to relax. I want you to hear every word that she speaks and make it relevant to the service that you provide to the people that we serve. We don't just serve black folk, we serve all folk. We come with a different kind of knowledge because we've been empowered to share that knowledge. And the only way that we can enrich what we do for others is that we learn each day. It's a lived experience. Nothing that we do is by happenstance. Everything we do is because there's a divine power who enriches us, empowers us. I believe social work is a calling in itself. I believe that God has specifically chosen each and every one of us to reach out and extend ourselves to his people, and we are responsible for what we do. We have ethics and protocols and values that we put into place. So each day we must take the time to learn how we can do what we do better. So sit back, don't relax, and hear what Dr. Peyton McCoy has to tell you about walking into your season as we enhance your awareness and cultural being. Thank you for coming today. Thank you, Mr. West. We appreciate you because when I called Dr. Beard, she said, call Ronnie West. I got your number in my cell phone. So this will not be the last time that we use it. Thank you all for coming. Dr. Peyton McCoy.
Thank you so much. I'll say, Dr. Renata, we claim those things that haven't come yet because they are right around the corner. I thank you so much for entrusting this task to me. And I was not nervous until I got here and saw this august body, all of you sitting in it. And I was so happy, but of course a little apprehensive at the same time. It was a pleasure to see Dr. Bibbs because of course she started preaching here when she was only 2 years old. The church has been here 94 years and she said she's been here 14 and she's a child prodigy and started preaching when she was 2. I wanted to say before I begin that I'm just so happy to be in a place that feels right. Because you can be in the midst of the right idea at the wrong time. Or let me put it this way, you can be in the midst of the right idea at the right time, but waste it on trying to make the right stuff work in the wrong place, which is as difficult as trying to separate wet from water. For example, in my hometown of Portsmouth, Virginia, the story of Hip Hop Harry is legendary. Now, Mama used to say that the story began at the Beulah Greater Baptist Church of Mount Zion, Church for the Reconciliation, for the Sanctification, for the Saints of our Lord, in the Church of the Advent on the mountain of his utmost grace and mercy, Selah. Water is ubiquitous in Portsmouth, so Harry Hippie and his son, Hip Hop Harry, got baptized down at the river. Their daddy, Harry Hippie, was a farmer and had done quite well in spite of setbacks, obstacles, pitfalls, and persecution. He was persistent, focused, handsome, and hardworking. After he got saved, he decided he wanted to join the local Baptist church. He put on his farmer overalls, rode his horse Ludibel to the church, tied her in front of the church, but when he got to the door, the usher said, take that beast and turn yourself around. You can't come in this church. We don't serve your kind in this church. And he turned, or she turned him away. Thinking that his attire may have projected the wrong image and calling card, the next Sunday, Harry Hippie put on his Brooks Brothers suit, got out his fire engine red F-150 truck, and parked in front of the church. But a deacon met him at the door this time saying, I thought you'd be coming back, but we can't have folk like you in this church. Now, like I said, Harry Hippie had done quite well, and so had his son, Hip Hop Harry, who was an artist in New York City. Harry Hippie called Hip Hop Harry and asked him to join him the next Sunday for church. So the following Sunday, Harry Hippie put on his Giorgio Armani suit, pulled his Bentley out of the garage, picked up Hip Hop Harry from the airport, parked in front of the church door. That same Medea-looking usher that was standing there the first time came out. not wanting to admit that she had judged him incorrectly and prematurely. She said, "This is a sanctified church, and neither you nor your hip-hop son fit in here." Confused, dejected, and rejected, Harry Hippie first calmed his son down, and father and son sat on a bench outside the church. They were perplexed, perturbed, and unnerved. So they prayed, and they prayed, and they prayed some more. They had their own worship service right there on a bench in front of that church. And right then, legend has it, Mama said that Jesus appeared on the bench beside them. Jesus said, "Don't worry about it, Harry. Me and my dad have been trying to get in this church since they built it, and we can't get in either. So don't even worry about it." Oh, but I'm so glad Jesus and his daddy got in this church. This is a beloved community. And what is a community without love? So come on and go back with me, back to me for a 60-second journey down Time's Lane. Let's go down the historical corridor, because it all started back then. It started before back then evolved into right now, before this transitioned into that, before was, and before mercy and grace emerged as conjoined twins. It started when the ancient spirit stepped out of nowhere, created everywhere, worked everything together for good, you know, like grandma kneads the dough for her delicious homemade Sunday rolls. It started when this great I am stood up, stepped back, snapped back like stand back and said, "Now that's Maxwell House percolating some kind of good." That was the preamble of the African American journey. And here we are. God knew right then and there that we needed social workers and compassionate people and practitioners and committed members of the beloved community in solidarity, just like you. So with that preamble, this is a marvelous, magnificent, mesmerizing mixture of fantabulous social workers and practitioners up in here. It is a convocation, a compelling convocation that includes the old school, hip-hop, new school, neo-soul school, the diva fly, Debo fly, still fly, know I'm fly, nouveau fly, even the don't make me lie about how I got fly. All of us are here speaking through the universal language of love. So greetings and salutations. Bonjour, hola, comment allez-vous, très bien, merci. How you doing? And even hello. I know you heard a little about me, but I'm part scholar, kind of sort of part poet, part from the hood, part diva, part, well, Renaissance kind of sort of woman, and all of these parts make the whole. So I think you might want to know a little bit more about me, or at least get to know me a little bit better. And to do that, I'll set the foundation because I am a bold soul sister. You see, I'm a bold soul sister. I am a work in progress, evolving through a journey down time's corridors, challenged by dominance, yet protected by honey-dipped immersion in syncopated, sanctified, ancient soul. I am the gift of time's giver and the paradox of grace, a creative product, yet a process in perpetual motion, a scholar, artist, and let me say it again, a bold soul sister. I am a survivor. I even survived periodic vicious encounters with the marginalizing exploits of the Western domineering Tate family. Long story short, the Tate family patriarch Agitate had an illicit affair with his outcast common law lover Irritate, to which 4 unruly offspring were born. Cogitate kept staring up the wrong issues. Gravitate continued to move closer to dangerous liaisons disguised as patriotic sympathizers. Potentate made it his mission to run everybody else's business since he couldn't handle his own, and Hesitate lacked the courage to stand up for anything, so he sat down in the stands as the villainous isms played their seasonal games. But a funny thing happened. Justice stood up and decided to keep on keeping on, aided by the bodacious, bold, and the beautiful. I am a woman of faith. In fact, I traveled down Faith Street, bypassed Doubted Drive, took a right onto I Know That's Right Highway, took a detour to avoid Pitfall and Pity Party Parkway, and emerged as a reminder of the grand journey of a grand people who sang those old songs repeatedly, those dirges and those ditties and those blues and jubilees, and prayed their prayers nightly to an ever-present God, bended worn knees humbly to an unseen power that sang, we shall not be moved, like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. But I tell you, I am a thriver. I'm a product of people who kept lending their strength to the years, to the gone years and the now years and the maybe years. A product of those ancestors who spent their lives washing and ironing and cooking and scrubbing and sewing and plowing and patching and dreaming while dragging along, sacrificing for their children, and sometimes not even reaping, never gaining, never knowing, not even understanding. But here's the remix. 369, they made it so fine, we just have to thank them for their sweet, precious time. Their spiritual lifeline never broke. Haters couldn't make them choke. They grabbed a slice of sunshine and boarded a social justice coach. So hey, sisters, soul sisters, keep working your role, sisters. Fine brothers, kind brothers, thank God for bold, solid gold brothers. So now, the old kisses the new. Let a new earth arise. Let another world be born. Let a generation be lifted. Let a people loving freedom come to growth. Let a beauty full of healing and the strength of perpetual renewal be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let old songs and stories be remembered and new journeys be professed. Let a race of real men and women come home, get revived, rise up to speak truth to power, to facilitate justice for all. That's my story. I'm standing by it and sticking to it. I believe in individual transformation and equal opportunity, virtue and justice, an ethic of care and affirming identity. Like I said, I am a bold soul sister, committed and dedicated to justice for all. That's just who I am. I thought you'd want to know. You see, renewal and renovation are central themes in my writing. I write and speak about individual and collective transformation. I believe God placed a powerful spirit within us to be overcomers, transformers, to reinvent ourselves, to empower ourselves for success, to walk into new seasons. But the overarching theme is love, so I often think and write about love in 3 dimensions. Self or individual love, that's the first one. Organizational and institutional, such as the church and community, that's the second one. And community, the third. For example, last year when I visited another church, the Beulah Baptist Church for the glorification of the Mount Zion on the mountain of great blessings in the house of our Lord for his utmost holiness. That's different from the first one that I told you about that I can no longer repeat. That's one that I went to then. But this one, I went to another service. And they almost had more name than they had members. And that's okay. Those members knew every word in the Bible, but they didn't extend or show any love. Apparently, some of their members felt overlooked and even carried that grudge to the grave. Prime example, let me tell you. There was a lady there named Mrs. Jean Otey. She asked if she could address the gathering and began to tell the audience about the passing of her beloved aunt, Bertha Smiley. Now, from what I can understand, it seems that Aunt Bertha was a lovely woman, very poised, intelligent, and attractive. But for some reason, the fellas never asked her out. She never married and never even had a date. I'm not going to say too much about it because you might know her. But the family gathered to make arrangements. They started to call in the deacons and the brethren to be pallbearers. But just right then, Aunt Bertha's niece arrived. She said, no, put that to an end, put that plan to an end right now. Aunt Bertha wants all women pallbearers. Call the deaconesses. Now, you know how people jump to conclusions. So everybody started looking around and started whispering. So Aunt Bertha's niece said, well, you can read it for yourselves, as she hands them Aunt Bertha's letter of last will and testament, which read as follows. And I quote, I wrote it down so I remember. I have asked the Ladies Auxiliary Deaconess Board number 777 to be my honorary pallbearers and my sorors to be the active. I have instructed them to bother men from my casket. I guess you're wondering why. But let me tell you something. If them men couldn't take me out while I was living, ain't no need of them taking me out now. This is not an autobiographical story, but let me say this. I have 2 points in saying that I am going somewhere with this. Aunt Beulah was wrong. She needed to recruit some men. I'm praying the social work profession will do that. We have a wonderful body of men here today, but we need more men in the profession. The second point that I'm making is the church had all that name, but no love. That's where I began. I noticed that you keep a robust agenda. I saw it in your program. I've heard it in your conversations. So keep on doing that. That agenda, though robust, is full of love. Continue. Now this is the part where I'm going to confess my sins. I was so humbled and excited to be invited to serve you today. I was prepared to do my homework, explore the subject matter, to survey the etymology of the word love, dissect the historical context, and to go deeper into who you are and who I am and what we're here for. I was energized and curious and charged and electrified, on fire, full of vim, vigor, vitality, off the chart good health, and excited about mulling the subject matter on my daily run when my endorphins without fail get to stepping. I was certified and qualified and hidden and holding with no indication of folding until out of the blue. I came down with a bad case of, I guess you can't have a good case of it, but a bad case of shingles. I got knocked out of condition and commission. That was the day the teacher went back to school and learned empirical lessons about love and service. How you give it, how you get it, and what you learn in the process. How to check yourself before you wreck yourself. How love in the midst of turmoil. How when you can't see the end of the tunnel makes all the difference, and how love rekindles the eternal flame of invincibility when you activate the deep love return to sender button. Yes, I apologize for not operating at full physical image and intellectual capacity and speed today, but I am unashamedly and unapologetically operating at 100% love, compassion, and service capacity because the universe gave me an empirical love lesson, and you helped. I don't think I would have understood it had it not been for your conference. Because it is easy to love yourself and serve everybody when everything else is going smooth, tight, and right. But when every now and then all hell breaks loose, excuse me, Reverend Bibbs, when it happens, and social workers understand that it happens, that's when you understand that nevertheless, strong love, deep love, is built on a bittersweet history etched in the collective memory of our DNA, a history whose lessons can strengthen us from generation to generation. History ensures hope. Hope facilitates courage. Courage generates persistence, and the summation is individual and collective empowerment in the beloved community. Writer Toni Morrison understood that power. She illustrates historical power facilitating hope through her character, Baby Suggs, in the novel Beloved. Perhaps you've read it. Perhaps you know about it, but anyway, come on and go back with me and let's revisit it. To a hot Saturday afternoon somewhere around 1873 when a lady delivers a litany of black love to her beloved. It is an enactment and expression of black love, black joy, black community, and black faith. Baby Suggs tells her beloved that the only grace they will have is the grace they can imagine. And if you cannot see it, you will not have it. They have come together in an open space, deep in the woods. She said, here, in this place, we flesh. Flesh that weeps, laughs. Flesh that dances on bare feet in grass. Love it hard. Yonder they do not love your flesh. They despise it. They don't love your eyes. They'd just as soon pick them out. No more do they love the skin on your back. Yonder they flay it. And oh, my people, they do not love your hands. Those they only use, tie, bind, chop off, and leave empty. Love your hands. Love them. Raise them up and kiss them. Touch others with them. Pat them together. Stroke them on your face, because they don't love that either. You gotta love it. You. And know they ain't in love with your mouth. Yonder, out there, they will see it broken and break it again. What you say out of it, they will not heed. When you scream from it, they do not hear. This is flesh I'm talking about here. Flesh that needs to be loved. Feet that need to rest and to dance. Backs that need support. Shoulders that need arms. Strong arms, I'm telling you. And oh, my people, hear me. They do not love your neck. Unnoosed and straight. So love your neck. Put a hand on it, grace it, stroke it, and hold it up. And all your inside parts that they just as soon slop for hogs, you got to love them. That dark liver, and the beat of that beating heart, and that beating heart. Love that too. More than anything else, more than eyes or feet or lungs that have yet to breathe free air. Hear me now. Love your heart, for this is the prize. Then, saying no more, she stood up and danced with her twisted hip the rest of what her heart had to say, while the others opened their mouths and gave her the music. Long notes held together the four-part harmony, and it was perfect enough for their deeply loved flesh. Love is the power. She ends it there, but we would say that love is the power in the darkest hour. Dr. King had it right. He talked about power and said, power is the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, or economic changes. In this sense, power is not only desirable, but necessary in order to implement the demands of love and justice. One of the greatest problems of history, he said, is that concepts of love and power are usually contrasted as polar opposites. Love is identified as a resignation of power, and power with a denial of love. What is needed, though, is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is sentimental and anemic. We need a transformation. And as I think about it, social workers are poets, prophets, reformers, and transformers. You are all picture makers through your love. And this ability is the secret of your power and achievements. You see what ought to be by the reflection of what is and endeavor to remove the contradiction. And we all have contradictions, but we persevere in spite of them and do the hard work to rectify them. In fact, you see the great paradox of Western modernity, or the contradiction, I should say, of Western modernity, is the democracy, that notion that all men are created equal. See, they had it wrong right from the start because women weren't even in the picture, but they said that all men are created equal. That notion flourished, particularly for men of property, right besides the growing, flourishing transatlantic slave trade. What a contradiction. But Frederick Douglass said poets, prophets, and reformers are all picture makers, as we said, and this ability is the secret of their power and achievements. They see what ought to be by the reflection of what is and endeavor to remove the contradiction. What kind of contradictions, Peyton? I'm so glad you asked. Come back with me to around 1900 and something, because we can't forget. Southern trees began to bear a strange fruit. Blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black body swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolias, sweet and fresh, and the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather and for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for a tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop. Somebody had to stand up and say, this is wrong. And somebody did. Somebody's all around. Somebody like, for instance, Fannie Lou Hamer. With the people, for the people, by the people. Fannie Lou Hamer said, I crack up when I hear them say that. They ought to just go ahead and say, with the handful, for the handful, by the handful, because that's what they're really trying to do. She was something. But the difference between then and now and Sister Fannie Lou Hamer and all of us is that Sister Fannie Lou Hamer stood right up to that powerful handful. Fannie Lou Hamer knew the miracle of fearlessness that follows fed upness. It's the miracle of getting to the point where you get so fed up with the status quo that with the Lord's help, you just do what you have to do, go where you have to go, and say what you have to say. So when Fannie Lou Hamer attended the 1964 Democratic National Convention as the vice chair of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, she told them, yes, she did, she told them, we didn't come all this way up here to compromise for no more than what we've gotten here, because all of us is tired. And our past is connected to our story, and our story is connected to our strength, and our strength is predicated on lifted voices that sang until all earth and heaven rang with a liberating harmony that is connected to a journey, and the journey is connected to the root from which we have come, and the root from which we have come produced a bind of race-transcending heroes and steel magnolia sheroes. and the root from which we have come is connected to the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent doorway to deliverance, pathway of peace, roadway to righteousness, highway of holiness, gateway of glory, master of the mighty, captain of the conquerors, head of the heroes, shield of the sheroes, leader of the legislators, overseer of the overcomers, chief speaker of the speakers, governor of the governors, president of the presidents, prince of princes, first lady of the first ladies. Like I said, Sister Hamer didn't fear nobody but the Lord. But there was another fearless woman, one of your colleagues, as a matter of fact, Dr. Barbara Solomon. And I thought about you. In my book, I talk about Dr. Solomon because what she says is so relevant to the way the notion she brought to life and is used so frequently. She's so instrumental in how it's conceived today. I'm talking about the notion of empowerment. She came about using it in the term we've come to understand it as she was doing what you do, working with one of her clients. And she talks, I'll read it from the book so I won't leave anything out, but she says, it was not until, or it says, I guess I said it because I wrote it, but anyway, it was not until Barbara Solomon's work was presented in the publication Black Empowerment, Social Work in Oppressed Communities that the term empowerment appeared in its current usage. Here, Solomon recommends an empowerment approach to social work in African American communities. She explains that theories of practice hold particular dangers when the client is Afro-American and experiencing powerlessness from systematic sources. This suggests that to facilitate client empowerment, that which is factual must be reframed and reinvented. Furthermore, workers and clinicians must possess the ability to accurately evaluate emic, that is culture-specific, and etic, or universal, hypotheses related to people from identified groups, and to develop accurate conceptualizations, including awareness of when clinical issues involve cultural dimensions, and when theoretical orientation needs to be adapted for more effective work with members of identified groups, not just African Americans, but all people. Solomon suggests that the verity and saliency of this approach is demonstrated in the case of one 50-year-old African American man, and that's what I want to bring to life. She's talking about his experience with two psychodynamically trained therapists. After the death of his wife, Mr. X felt powerless, meaningless, and depressed. The first therapist that he went to, that therapist used a treatment centered on earlier relationships to caretakers as they related to feelings about his wife. She used a Western approach. Then, soon after, Mr. X attempted suicide and, of course, did not go back to that therapist. But he went to the second therapist. That's the good thing. Also psychodynamically trained, but with an expanded focus. Her focus was on the treatment to include Mr. X's experiences with the wider ethno-system. It was of particular interest to the therapist that he was college educated, but never received any other kind of employment beyond his job at the post office. And of course, this was late 1970s, maybe 1980. So she started to, or the therapist started working with him, and they worked in that capacity, or he worked in that capacity for 20 years at the post office. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he always wanted to do something else. No one wants you when you're over 50, was his statement after his wife died. Especially, he added, if you're black. He said that in one of the therapy sessions, and he began to, or she began to listen to what he was saying, and he also revealed during that session that he had always dreamed of having his own business, as she prodded him to say more about that. As an adjunct to his regular therapy sessions, Mr. X was referred to a self-help group, and made up of, the group that is, was made up of persons interested in making midlife career changes. He remained in therapy in the self-help group, and the good story is that he was able to successfully negotiate a franchise with a national auto parts store. He began a second career. He was able to build a flourishing business. He was able to be a central part of his community. He was able to help other people go where he went but also understand what they had been through. So the second therapist's ability, that's the point, the ability to shift gears, drawing from a counseling repertoire that could tune into the client's historical perspective, facilitate a space to reconsider discarded dreams and present needs, and remember cultural recollections, facilitated an invaluably clear sense of life-changing empowerment. It helps the client to understand the complex interplay between what is experienced intrapsychically and what is experienced outside in the world. Through this understanding, workers can help the people to differentiate between the two and help them feel empowered and understood. This is of great benefit in the context of a person's feelings of powerlessness and disenfranchisement from systematic sources in the community. So we'll leave it there, but I will say that in the years that have followed Solomon's pioneering work offering empowerment as an approach to social work in African American communities, policymakers, researchers, prevention specialists, program administrators, and politicians have become interested in the empowerment concept. Now here's a footnote. We already talked about our formula: history, hope, courage, and persistence. And Frank, I'm getting ready to bring this in, and I think you all told me to give you the cue, and we'll have time for some questions, but they told me to sit down and shut up after a while, but that's a whole nother story. But let me just say this footnote before we end. We already talked about our formula, or maybe I did not formally call it that, but it's history, hope, courage, persistence that allows us to walk into new seasons. In fact, walk into every season. And that this is a survival formula predicated on deep love. I have some colleagues who don't understand the formula. I mentioned them earlier. You know that entire family. They say it's unnecessary because of their philosophy, or because of due to their philosophy. I handle them with a long handled spoon. You know, as I said, you perhaps know them, that Tate family, agitating, irritating, cogitating, potentating, all of them, who's running everybody else's business and all of that. But I'll tell you the purity, unadulterated truth. People like that, it's best to leave them alone. They're not ready to do the deep love, the work that deep love requires. But I have some other colleagues and friends who get it. They understand that deep love, and you gotta love to be a social worker. Deep love is a formula for success. And they understand that it is for those of us who persevere in spite of our imperfections. Deep love and service is a formula for the person who's down, but trying to escape defeated. It's a formula for when you're outdone, so you won't come undone. It's a formula for when you're distracted, but not distanced. It's a formula for one who feels debilitated, but not devastated. It's a formula for the sad to help them run smack dab into glad. It's a formula for when you find it impossible to be around people, but impossible to leave them. It's a formula for all seasons. It's for the best words in the right places, born in the human mind, blown up and refined. For long conversations and philosophical ramifications. It's for the 12 stuffers at the 13th step. I pray they'll never forget the first step. The courage, that is, that it took to take the first step. It's for times of increase through times of decrease, for the good you do and the wrong you did. It's for the lonely and the brokenhearted, for the new, blue, and poetic haiku, for those who feel they have it all or others who feel they have nothing at all. It's hope for the sick and a balm for the shut-in. It's for the was you been and the is you in. It's for the deep trying to get deep and the so deep that they're drowning deep. It's for the crazy and the lazy, the bored and the ignored, the beginners, the sinners, the losers and the winners, for the smooth, the cool, and even for the fool, because everybody plays the fool at least one time. For the rule benders and the repeat offenders, to the lovers and the troublers, the healers and the feelers, the fixers and the tricksters, to the hip-hoppers and the don't-stoppers, to the lost, the bound, the found, and the almost found. It's for when people who are down and out but not defeated. It's for people who are disoriented but not undone, distracted but not distanced, debilitated but not devastated. Deep love is for African American social workers, in fact, all social workers who considered giving up when the times got real rough. I think Richard Wright said it best. Isabel Wilkerson picked it up in her book, The Warmth of Other Suns. And so I would say that sometimes you got to leave the old land. Ancestors did it. We've known the colleagues who did it. And Wright said, I was leaving the old land to fling myself into the unknown. I was taking a part of the old land to transplant in alien soil, to see if it could grow differently, if I could drink of new and cool rains, bend in strange winds, respond to the warmth of other suns, and perhaps to bloom and flourish and grow and progress and love and learn and breathe and consume and digest the infinite lessons and possibilities and responsibilities of our historical past, our present, and our